In this video, I'm going to talk about winter care for roses, especially in a mild climate like here in California. I'll show you how I cut back these rose bushes, get them pest-free and full of life and ready to produce big, beautiful blooms this summer. So I have to admit, I am not a plant expert. I'm just a plant lover and a plant fan, and roses are not my forte. I know a lot about succulents, I know a lot about drought-tolerant plants, but I do love a good classic rose bush. And when I bought these roses a few years ago, they were in the clearance section of Home Depot. I couldn't help myself. They were bare root roses, and they just looked so pretty, and they were only about $5 each. So I said, why not? Well, we'll try them out. So here on the side of my house are my very, frankly, sad roses. This is a good spot for them. It's a south facing, but there's a bit of shade from trees over here. But I have not really taken care of them the way I should have. This is a red rose called a Mr. Lincoln. This one is a kind of light pink one called Belinda's Blush. So I haven't trimmed these back the way I should have. You can already see they're already like sprouting, but I need to give them a proper trim back. This one already has a bloom, a proper trim back so that it can grow much healthier. So I've had them for a few years. I originally had them planted in ground back in the corner back there, and they never really did that much. I planted them in pots and they've never really thrived. So I went to an expert. I met a lady here in town who showed me her absolutely gorgeous, beautiful rose garden, and I had to ask her what her tips were. And she, like most of us, went to her community looking for tips on how to make her roses thrive, especially because she was from the East Coast and used to the East Coast climate. We're here in California and we have a very mild climate, and rose care is a little bit different here. So we do have sort of winter care that helps roses do their best and grow their strongest for spring and summer blooming. So the first tip she shared with me, and that I've also learned from my hometown of Santa Barbara that has a beautiful rose garden, the first thing you're gonna wanna do with your roses in winter is around somewhere between mid-December to mid-February. It's February now, so we're kind of at the tail end of it. Ideally like mid-January, you're going to want to trim back your roses, like cut them completely back. And I don't know about you, but that's a very scary proposition for me. You know, when I see growth, I think, oh, my plant is growing, why would I trim that back? But honestly, it is so important for many reasons. Not only does it encourage new healthy growth, but apparently each year roses will produce new green stems, and the blooms come out of the new green stems, but not last year's green stems. So if you take a look at this rose, these are new green growths. This is a cane that came out maybe 2 years ago. You can see where I trimmed it, and then it produced all these new green branches, and I did get some flowers on it. I did have a lot of pest issues, and we'll go into that later. It did produce some new blooms, but now apparently these branches will not produce more blooms. So we want to get rid of these and encourage this branch to give off more new branches. Similarly, you can actually see there is a bloom coming here. Again, we're in a mild climate, so this could technically bloom year-round, and you can see that's off a new branch. So blooms really only come from new branches. And this one grew quite large. You can see where I trimmed it down last year, and it did produce some blooms. Let's see, we got 1, 2, 3, 4 there. We had some here. So we were successful in growing some blooms on this plant, and this is one really long cane. So trimming your plant back is not only good for encouraging new growth, but it also creates the shape that you want, because let's face it, this is not really a very pretty plant. As much as you sit here and you go, oh, look at all this new growth, this is not the shape of plant that you want. These plants have definitely seen better days. So let's take a real good close-up on this plant. We'll spin around this way. I feel like you'll get a better view of it. We'll take a look at where to trim this plant back to give it the best shot and the healthiest growth. So straight away, I can see this here is dead wood. And so if we just remove the dead wood, because it looks bad, but it's also going to make the plant more disease prone. I might need a stronger clippers. Let's see. Here we go. You can see where I've removed other dead wood before. So we're just going to want to get rid of that, as well as these other dead wood canes that are kind of everywhere here. Another recommendation is to remove, and this is probably what I should have done before, remove any branches that are too close to each other, any crossing branches. That is a recommendation to cut those as well. So these are also dead wood, so I'm just going to remove these, but had they not been, one of those would have been recommended to be trimmed. So for the living branches, we cut off the dead wood, but for the living branches, it is recommended to cut down any of these kind of green growths, and then any of the canes that you do want to keep, to cut them down to about 8 to 10 inches. So this one is already at about 8 to 10 inches. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut these branches, and I can see there are little growth buds here. So I might not cut it all the way back, but there's actually another little growth bud here. It's recommended that you cut at a 45-degree angle and within a quarter of an inch of one of these new growth points. I'm going to give you a close-up of that. So here, these are the new little growth points. You can see here, there's some more coming out of this kind of main cane. There's another one here. It's recommended that you cut 45-degree angle and a quarter inch from a growth point. So I'm going to do it just like this. A nice clean cut like that. And hopefully that should encourage this whole branch to create a lot of newer, healthier branches. Now this doesn't look very healthy to me. I'm going to trim that back as well. So like that, I'm going to go through and I'm going to take off. I'm going to take a look at some of these places. I'm going to take off these branches. Luckily there aren't too many, you know, I really haven't taken very good care of this plant, so it didn't have a lot of new growth, and hopefully once we get into the next part, which is like fertilizing this plant, we'll get a lot more growth in the spring, but for now I'm just going to continue cutting some of these older branches off. Because even though, you know, you could argue you need a leaf to photosynthesize, these leaves aren't, they're old, they're not doing the best job of photosynthesizing. So this, it has one bloom on here, so this could be a mistake. I'm going to keep that on there for now. And then we'll hope that we'll get more new healthy canes growing out of this plant in the spring. But for now, this one I'm going to leave as it is. I'm going to take all these old dried up leaves and remove them as well. Now, moving onto this other rose, which will be a little bit more of a challenge. If you look at this, it has one big old growth, and it has some dead wood for sure. We're going to remove that, all of these dead pieces, and now we have this one really long cane and then this one as well. And even though it's not as nice and compact, it's kind of a different shaped rose stem. So I'm hopefully doing the right thing. I'm just going to go through, and I can see some of these branches I think are actually okay to keep. Now the question is where to cut this. So I'm looking at this. There's a lot more thorns on this one. I can see growth points here, here, here. I feel like this might be too tall. Do we want the plant that large, or do we want it to grow more compact down here? I think we want it more compact. So here we go. Here's my 45-degree angle to avoid these thorns, right above a growth point. And there we go. Out with the old. So here as well, there's some nice growth point. I'm going to keep some of these on here. There's a nice growth point here. I'm going to keep that one, because it's from those growth points that the new branches will come out, and it's from the new branches that will come the blooms. This looks like it's got some scale, and that's another reason we're removing some of these leaves and the canes. Is it helps with the pest control. We get a lot of pests here in California, the powdery mildew, we get a lot of little caterpillars, and this really prevents it. And in fact, you can even see there is already powdery mildew on this plant, and we're going to go into how to treat that as well. But first things first, remove the canes. All right, I'm going to take this. So this little cane, you can see I trimmed it before. There's a branch that's crossing with these. We want to get rid of that. So I'm going to trim it here. Doesn't seem like much. And I'm going to actually cut off the leaves because there is powdery mildew on those. And with this one, I'm going to trim that. There was a rose there. I'm going to get rid of these leaves because of the disease that's on them already. Remove them all. And here, it's kind of a challenging one. There was obviously a bloom there. This is dead wood. And there's a growth point there. It doesn't look super healthy though. There's another one there. We'll just go for it. I'm gonna cut that. And growth point. Not a great growth point. I'm going to do it here and remove these leaves. So we have our skeleton rose bushes now, ready for step 2. So here in California, one of the biggest issues with the roses is having pests such as powdery mildew and caterpillars, as I mentioned. So there's a couple of recommendations that I was given on the next step for taking care of these plants. Is you treat the stems with a good copper fungicide. That will help the powdery mildew, get rid of it, and also taking all the old foliage from out of these pots will also help with that. You may have noticed these are in pots, they're not in ground. Roses do probably best grown in ground. Just where I am in my garden, I don't really have a good in-ground place for these. We also have a lot of gopher issues, so pots are the way to go. So for now, this is the next step that we're going to do with these is I'm going to treat them with a copper fungicide to help with the powdery mildew. And then also rub them down with, the recommendation is rub them down with a horticultural oil. In this case, I am using neem oil. Neem also helps with powdery mildew and rust, which is another big issue that roses get. You can see this one has a little bit of it. And it also helps kill the caterpillar eggs that are probably all over these roses. So that is the next step for us. So I'm going to start with the neem oil. You can buy neem oil pre-mixed like I have. You can also buy it concentrated and mix it yourself. It's supposedly pretty non-toxic to humans as far as a pesticide goes. I'm going to give it a really good rub down. It's kind of stinky, but I'm really saturating it all over these stalks, and I'm going to get rid of the leaves on here that just aren't looking good. Again, I don't think they're really helping with photosynthesis much, and they're kind of helping carry those diseases that I'm quite certain are on this. And this could be a huge mistake, leaving this on here. Well, we'll see. When we come back in the summer, I'll give you an update. Now here as well, what's tough with this variety of rose, it's got a lot more thorns, but I do see some scale insects on here. I'm gonna try and rub them where I can, and hopefully the neem should help with that a bit. It's something I'm just gonna have to really keep an eye on. So we're gonna really spray this down well with our neem oil. Now, if you weren't changing the soil, I would also spray it all over the top of the soil. I'm gonna do a little bit of a soil change because these pots have seen better days. I'll take you through that next, but for now, we'll just keep with our spraying task, making sure every nook and cranny has been taken care of, and also, again, checking for those scale insects and trying to remove them where I can. The tough thing with some scale insects is that their scale is really hard, and it protects them from these pesticides. They've adapted. So that is well and truly oiled. And next we're going to go with our copper fungicide, which will help stave off future powdery mildew, especially this time of year. I'm on the coast. We get a lot of what we call marine layer, a little fog. We've had a lot of rain. That moisture in the air, it just sits on the leaves and it creates this mildew. And it's interesting. I feel like the scale bugs are kind of they feel that they're under attack. They're actually kind of moving. So that's good. It's working, right? Find a new home. Okay, that's step 2 done. So for my next step, you'll notice I've moved them onto the lawn, and again, this may be bad advice, because I have heard that roses, they really don't want, once they're established, they really don't want their roots to be messed with. You really shouldn't do that. But I do want to add some fresh, healthy soil with a little bit more nutrients in it. This soil's kind of seen better days. So I'm not gonna I'm gonna repot them, but I'm not gonna mess with the roots. So wish us luck. So I was looking for rose specific soil. They didn't have it at my nursery or the hardware store. So rose is like a good nutrient dense, slightly acidic soil. I kind of was sitting there trying to figure out what the best one. I just chose some premium potting mix. I had some already. I got another good organic potting soil with flowers in mind. It's recommended not to get a garden soil, but to get more of a potting, like a flower potting soil. So I'm just gonna pull these out and just add a little bit more fresh soil. These pots, these are actually from Target, and they have a false bottom to help with watering. So they're not actually, there's not as much soil in here as one would assume. So I need a spade. So I'm gonna do this as carefully as I can because, as mentioned, I don't want to mess with the roots. I just want to give it some nice fresh soil, especially on the bottom. It just feels like they're sinking down a little bit. So I'm hoping I can like kind of lift the plant out. Maybe we'll have to dump it out this way. There we go. Okay, so I'll just shake it off a bit. And actually some of the roots have started growing into the bottom. More reason to give it more soil, fresh soil. Now, okay, that's one. I'm gonna dump that and add more fresh soil, and I'm not gonna mess with the roots too much. I can see I have lots of nice, it looks like I've kind of added some cactus mix, which is really nice, well draining. That's what you want with roses. They like it well draining. They don't want to be sitting in clay. Hopefully we're not messing with the roots with this one too bad. Little bit of small roots, not the kind of main tap root, shall we say. Actually, you can take the bottom off. See some of those roots that were there. I think the plants will be okay with just losing these kind of small amount of roots. Should be fine. We're gonna do a bit of a mix of our blue ribbon blend. So this is a nice soil. It has some really good, well-draining elements. You can see big bits of kind of vermiculite and other organic elements. It does have added organic nutrients. This blend is supposedly good for good water retention, which is good when you're in a pot and we live in a pretty warm climate. This mix includes some good earthworm castings, kelp meal, bat guano, feather meal, a natural wetting agent, again, to keep it nice. I'm gonna mix those up, like making mud pies. Okay, now, hopefully we didn't harm the roots too much. I'm not gonna really mess with them. This has gained a good probably 5 or 6 inches of soil. I do want to bury it a little bit. I'm gonna give this a kind of a bang. Okay, so now what? What's the next step? Well, I have found, and I was recommended, the final step is to use a systemic fertilizer as well as pest control. So this helps with those pest issues from the inside out, and it also fertilizes the plant. Now, this is an insecticide. You're supposed to not use this around plants that are edible or things like that, because we don't want to be eating this ourselves. So just bear that in mind if you are using this in ground on plants that are near edible plants. You might want to find something else. This one in particular, it says all-in-one rose and flower care. It gets rid of black spot, powdery mildew, and rust. I've also used this with some of my tropical plants. I have an alocasia that was just blighted with spider mites and mealybugs, and this really did the trick. Not only got rid of the pest, but it is absolutely thriving now. Whatever the fertilizer is, it really loves it. So it is kind of a sprinkle type of thing. Go by the recommendations on the bottle depending on the size of your plant and the size of the pot. It says for rose bushes, for flowers, for roses, apply half a cup evenly over an area of 3 foot by 3 foot, 9 square feet. So this is not 3 foot by 3 foot. This is maybe at most 1.5 of that. So I'm going to use less than that, and I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. Like half a cup seems like a lot. I'm just going to give this a bit of a sprinkle like that. I don't want it to, again, burn the roots or anything. So I'm going to sprinkle it on the top as such. So this is the systemic that I chose. There's many different options out there. So I've sprinkled it into the soil, and I'm just going to kind of work that in very gently. Again, I don't want to disturb any roots. We just want to kind of get it in there. And here's the other one. Luckily, this nice fresh soil is really pliable. And then last step, I'm going to give them a good, nice soak. And ideally now, that will help the soil move around in this pot. It'll slowly dissolve that systemic. And I can't wait to see how these start to do later in the spring. I will keep you posted. So just to round it off, what we did for our winter care for these roses, we cut back all the stems from around 8 to 10 inches. We cut off any dead wood. We cut off any crossing branches. We cut off any leaves that look diseased. We then wiped it down with a horticultural oil. In my case, I used neem oil, And then once we gave it a good soak of the neem oil, we sprayed it down with a good copper fungicide that helps with rust and powdery mildew. I gave these pots some nice fresh soil, taking care to not disturb the roots too much. I gave it a really good, healthy organic soil that had really good drainage, was slightly acidic, was meant really for more flowers, had fertilizer and good components for flowers. And then finally, we gave it a good little shake of some systemic 3-in-1 care, which is a good 3-in-1. It's a fertilizer, pest control as an insect control, and disease control, and gave everything a good watering. I'm going to be sure and put this in a bright, sunny spot, watering it regularly, making sure the soil never gets too overly dry. That is it for my winter rose care tips. Like I mentioned, I am not a rose expert. I'm just going on the advice of other experts. So these roses will hopefully be a testament to how this new rose care regime works.
1 week later.
So it has been almost exactly a week since I pruned these rose bushes and wiped them down. And here is what they look like after a week. All of those little buds have started growing. And that's the whole idea. That is what we're encouraging this plant to do. And it's hard to tell, but there's even some little new growth points in here in this kind of the original wood. So this is great progress. There's the other one, not as much growth, but there is some growth for sure. Right here, you can see some nice fresh little buds. And this growth, that is where the flowers will grow from. They only grow from new branches. So 1 week in, so far so good. So that is it for my winter rose care for a mild climate. Hopefully this has been helpful for you if you are a rose noob, or if you are someone like me and you're just trying to get your roses back to looking their best. If you have any questions, please feel free to pop them in the comments below. Shout out to Nanette, who gave me all my advice on roses. If you have any questions, pop them in the comments below. If there's anything I can't answer, I will send it on to my experts and hopefully be able to give you some really good advice and answers. I will also keep you posted with how these roses do throughout the season. It has now been a week since we trimmed them, and I already showed you some of the amazing growth in just 1 week, which hopefully is a good sign that this rose will do great this season. Don't forget, you can also find me on Instagram and TikTok, and of course, subscribe.